I can just tell you the news. Massachusetts governor deploys National Guard to drive buses. All right. There's the story. 250 members of the National Guard are being deployed to support and assist local communities in their school transport efforts. There's two things I see in this story. One, they're starting to deploy National Guard to like do infrastructure work. That's crazy. The second thing is, aside from the fact that it's sort of, it's like a military move to support the crumbling infrastructure, our economy is on fire. I don't know about you guys in the UK. I know it's pretty bad, I guess. You were telling me a story about it was like really difficult to even travel here. But seeing this story just says to me, like, everything we've seen over the past few months with food shortages, labor shortages, this is bad. I suspect it's going to get substantially worse.
I just saw Butcher said that beef prices were going to be up like $2 by next week, $2 a pound maybe or something. By next week, there was
a period where it doubled. Beef, there was like 1 week where beef was double the price. Great reset. What are we doing? What's happening?
Man, it's so weird, man. We're living in the strangest time period. And what's crazy is that all of us who are able to foresee some of these second, third, and fourth order consequences were labeled all sorts of names, right? So from the beginning of this whole pandemic situation, going way back, I was far more concerned about the response and the downstream repercussions of that response, economically, financially, people's health, people missing diagnoses of other diseases, people's mental well-being, depression, suicide, effect on children, all of this stuff, whole bunch of things I haven't even mentioned. It was obvious, right? I mean, if you remember back to, say, about 14, 15 months ago, people were acting like it was some toss-up between saving lives and saving the economy. When people were talking about the economy, they were saying, you want people to die, you don't care about grandma, you're putting money above people. That's what people were saying, because they don't understand that the economy is the people. If people aren't working, then there's repercussions of that. In my country, like the NHS, it was all save the NHS, save the NHS. I was like, how do you think the NHS is funded? If people aren't working, then you're not saving the NHS. You're actually going to eventually bankrupt it. And it was already in a tight position before all this. But the thing is, when people are gripped by fear, they lose their ability to think logically and rationally.
Elon Musk tweeted that meme where it was like an astronaut on the moon and a comet rips through the earth, blowing it up. And then he's like, oh no, the economy, or something like that. There were a bunch of people who were posting dinosaurs looking up at the meteor coming down, and they were like, oh no, the economy. And I'm just like, I see this stuff and I'm like, man, it's like you said, the people who can see down the road, who can see the second, third, fourth, fifth layer consequences to this, are telling them like, dude, you have no idea what's in store. And even right now, we're hearing a story about the National Guard being deployed. Well, what does it mean when the government starts deploying military to handle infrastructure? You get dangerously close to such infrastructure damage that martial law is a real potential, as a real possibility.
I kind of like it though, in that I think that our National Guard and our military should be used to build the world. That would be nice, instead of destroy it for once. Like if we could build solar power, water condensation on housing all around, decentralized. So in a way,
we did that in Afghanistan. Come on, we built
not
the
through
nation,
force,
right?
Just through like where it's wanted, where it's needed, where people need drinking water.
I hear what you're saying, but I recognize it. If they were like, hey, we've got a National Guard and we're going to do like fixing this road and, fixing the pipes in Flint and maybe helping build new houses in middle America. But this issue is our infrastructure is crippled to the point where they're like, if we don't have people working, use military. Like, I'm not going to pretend like this guarantees we're headed towards communist dictatorship or something. But when you get to the point where your military is being used for critical infrastructure, if that continues and more jobs are lost, which is happening, and more nurses are quitting, more doctors are quitting, how long until they're like, oh, they've already deployed National Guard for hospitals.
Yeah,
how long until they're like, okay, plumbing? How long until they're like, the critical infrastructure of this country is being run by the military?
There's a big difference between using the military to do good and having no choice but to use the military, because that's a deep spiral that could get out of control.
What's the proper role of the National Guard? I'm familiar with the term, but I don't know what is its role supposed to be.
I'll look it up.
Well, so we National Guard provide, it's simple way to put it, state army. I know that's probably offensive to maybe a lot of National Guardsmen, but each state has their own National Guard. They provide defense for the country. They provide support. They're deployed in riots and things like that. They're not supposed to, it's my understanding, I could be wrong with this because I was not in the National Guard or in the military, so you guys might know better. They're not supposed to enforce laws necessarily, but provide support internally, whereas the Army, the Navy, the Marines, mostly external defense of this nation, they can't enforce laws internally, so...
This says here, during peacetime, this is from military.com, each state National Guard answers to the leadership in the 50 states, 3 territories, and District of Columbia. During national emergencies, however, the president reserves the right to mobilize the National Guard, putting them in federal duty status.
Yeah, so we see them deployed for riots pretty often.
Okay.
Floods, natural disasters, they come out and they provide that critical support in major disasters. So I think it's fair to say that we're looking at an economic disaster right now. My concern is this is not a disaster that ends. You know, hurricane comes in, hurricane leaves. You got to fix everything. National Guard can come in, provide a security and assistance, and it's awesome. This disaster is being exacerbated.
Yes.
The mandates are expanding. They're getting worse. The economy is taking a hit.
Yep.
Now Biden's got his national vaccine mandate. I don't know if you heard this in the
I
U.S.
have, yeah.
100 employees or more. People are going to quit like crazy.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's a manufactured crisis.
Exactly.
It's manufactured. When I say that, I'm not specifically saying that the virus is manufactured, but the response to the virus, none of this stuff is necessary, right? It's not necessary, especially at this point, right? It's September 2021 now. We're not even talking February or March 2020. At this point, where you've got the majority of the population have already got immunity, not just in the USA, but in lots of other countries.
CDC study said 80%.
Yeah. And they're still just going further and further. I mean, if you create these mandates, there's going to be job losses. Like, that's obvious. So I know with a lot of people don't like to assume bad intention, and people like to assume that politicians and the media, so on and so forth, are always working in the best interests of the people. But at this point, I personally cannot put this down to incompetence. I haven't been able to probably for about a year, but certainly at this stage, I'm like, man, there has to be malicious intent there, because it doesn't make sense to me otherwise.
Maybe, right? You know, because you mentioned Hanlon's razor before the show as we sit down. Never attribute to malice that which can be explained by incompetence. But there's something other than malice or incompetence. There's banality.
Yep.
You know, so we often, dumb or diabolical, I think, who
Jack Murphy.
Jack Murphy, yeah. Dumb or diabolical. And, what about indifferent? What about you have a governor who's sitting there and he's like, all right, so we got COVID deaths. I don't want to take responsibility for this. Shut it down. It is easier for a politician to say, shut everything down, so that they can be like, see, nobody died.
Yeah.
And then when people are like, you're damaging the economy, he can be like, pandemic, don't look at me. If he says reopen, like they do in Texas and Florida, what happens? The media says, oh, all those dead people are your fault. So you have politicians who are just, it's the fecklessness. It's the, I don't want to be responsible. So if I lock everything down, you can't blame me for the lockdown. You can blame the pandemic. But if somebody dies, then they're going to blame me for not locking down.
Yeah. I would consider that incompetence.
I suppose.
I'd call that incompetence, because if you are a leader, your part of your job is to lead and to make decisions and to have principles and to stand on them. So if you're not willing to do that, then you're not competent in that
Yes,
position.
fair point. If you're incapable of assuming the responsibility of the office, then you are incompetent.
What if you're unwilling?
Then you shouldn't be there. Like,
same
why
thing.
are you there?
Like so
Is that malicious? I guess is my question.
No. I mean, I think malicious means you mean to cause some type of harm or pain or suffering. But incompetence. I mean, incompetence doesn't. It can mean stupidity, but it can also simply mean what it says. Right? You're not competent at this particular task. There are things that I'm incompetent at. Right? I'm an incompetent ice skater. I'm incompetent at.
I can't believe
today.
Admit that.
Right, I'm an incompetent skateboarder, right? Like I don't know how to scam. I have no competency in skateboarding.
I saw you miss a few of those shots in basketball hoop. I walked down and you like missed, and I was like, he's got no skills.
So incompetence doesn't necessarily mean. I think some people think it means like stupidity, but it's really more lack of ability in a particular thing.
You could also have malicious people that are incompetent.
Oh, you can have both. Yeah. They're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
They're not mutually exclusive.
But, dude.
But the way, if you look around the world
and
and you see the way things are marching in lockstep, like how that can't be accidental, right? How is it that all these different countries, I mean, look at the Commonwealth countries. How is it all these different countries are doing things which, like, literally prior to last year, were totally unthinkable. Whether you're even from a simple lockdown to something as simple as a mask like, this is unprecedented. When was there ever a mask mandate? When was there ever, like, lockdown was just prison terminology.
Right.
Like, we've had diseases, we've had vaccines, we've had all these things our entire lives, but all of a sudden it's this and it's that and it's that, and all these different countries are doing the same thing.
There's a couple things I'll say to that. Are you familiar with the concept of a standalone complex?
No, I'm not.
So a conspiracy, a group of people coordinate the effort, then take action, and then you'd see a bunch of banks get robbed, and you're like, what is this conspiracy? A standalone complex would be, say, 50 banks get robbed in every state at the same time, and you're like, this must be planned and coordinated. But a standalone complex means that each individual took independent action that just coincided with other similar actions, creating the appearance of a conspiracy.
Which can be exacerbated by copycat crimes and things. So if one, especially with social media, if one person makes a bad move in a government, all the other governments are going to be like, hey.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely a lot of that going. I mean, I don't know if you guys know that the UK was initially going to take the Sweden approach throughout this whole thing.
Yeah.
Right? That was the initial plan for the UK. Yeah. So Boris Johnson was not, the UK was never supposed to have lockdowns and mask mandates, all of that. And then specifically, there was a lot of pressure from certain people in the media put on Boris Johnson. And then if you remember, he himself got hospitalized with COVID. Yep. So he got shook. And he saw, that was when he flipped, he came out of hospital, and then he started singing a different tune.
Let me say one more thing too, and then in the countries all doing the same thing. If you take away someone's knowledge of freedom, then they won't understand what freedom is. They won't, I'll give you a chicken example, right? So we got these baby chickens. I gave it a stink bug and they just stare at it all confused. And I'm like, yo, your chickens eat the stink bug, but they don't know. No one's taught them, right? So when all of these countries do the same thing, it's because they sit there and they watch one country do something and they go, do what they did. So, often when it comes to chickens, I'll throw in some food object they've never seen before, and the seven outside will come and look at it, and then one will eat it, and then as soon as they do, everyone then's like, oh, okay, I can eat this.
Yes.
So probably a better example is business. As we're growing Timcast.com and hiring more people, we're running into these bureaucratic problems, and we're running into just general issues with running a business. And then it turns out the solutions are exactly what the infrastructure has provided. Like, why are there services that provide HR services? It's like, oh, because we encountered this issue, and that's why all the businesses do things this way. So I don't necessarily think it's a conspiracy or anything like that, or not to imply that you were saying it was. But to see all these countries doing the same thing, I think it's two things. One, they have no idea what they're doing. So they're simply like, I don't know, do what they did. And then the other thing is, well, I guess that's basically it, right? If they can't perceive of how to deal with this, then they just absolve themselves of responsibility, do what everyone has done elsewhere, because then they can act like they're doing something. Because you'll often hear from many on the left saying, well, we can't do nothing, when in reality, nothing is often the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think people have forgotten that an overreaction can be just as bad or even more deadly than an underreaction or no reaction at all. And I've been screaming for a long time that the consequences of the response are more severe than the consequences of the initial threat. I still maintain that position. I don't know exactly how you'd be able to calculate the total harm and deaths caused by all this, but these things have long-term repercussions. I mean, if you remember back to the financial crisis in 2008, there's still repercussions from what happened 13 years ago. That's what happened, and it would be extraordinarily hard to quantify the amount of harm and pain and problems that have come from that. But I think this is the same thing. I think literally 10 years from now, you're still going to have issues which originated, again, not because of the virus itself, but because of the response to it, whether or not that is intentional or that is a matter of incompetence or some combination. That's up for people to decide.
Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.